What I think is most remarkable about my great-great-uncle was his role in the Republican Party. And he was ultimately a delegate to the 1860 Republican Convention in Chicago that nominated Lincoln. And apparently, conventions in those days were not determined ahead of time, and there were 8 ballots before Lincoln was elected, and he stood with Lincoln for all 8 ballots. He was an abolitionist and described in the book how he came to that position. He went to visit a friend in Kentucky. He tells the story of going to church one Sunday and feeling ill and ultimately returning to the boarding house where he was staying. And as he walked past the police station, he heard the wailing of a slave who was being whipped. And he describes that in this way. On the way to my boarding house, I passed near what was known as the watch house, or headquarters of the police, and was shocked to hear the cries of a Negro woman who was maid to some wealthy mistress, who had become offended at her that morning and had sent for the police and had given orders that her servant be taken to the police quarters and given a certain number of lashes. The contrast between the quiet worshipers at the church and their seeming devotion and the horrible cries that filled the air from the unfortunate Negro slave woman was a comment on the injustice and brutality of the institution that made an impression upon my mind that has never been erased. So he supported the abolitionist movement throughout his career. He also made a comment about fickleness of our electorate. He described at one point when he had been to Washington, it was during the election of Mr. Garfield. He walked out into the street and came across an African-American gentleman and started up a conversation with him. And he described him a well-dressed, intelligent-looking colored man on the pavement. He asked him whether or not the colored men of the city would not all support Mr. Garfield, the Republican nominee. He goes on to say, to my surprise, he said, "No, sir, some of them will vote the Democratic ticket." I said to him, "How is it possible for a colored man to support the Democratic ticket in view of the history of the past 25 years? The colored race had been emancipated and enfranchised and made equal before the law through the efforts of the Republican Party of the nation. How then can any of your people support the Democratic Party?" "Well, sir," said he, "in some respects a colored man is very much like a white man." Said I, "What do you mean by that?" "Well, sir," said he, "I'll tell you. Occasionally, sir, you'll find a colored man that is a damn fool.